So come the end of February, convicted sexual offenders and gender-based violence perpetrators' names will be made public. Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi made the announcement on plans to ensure the National Register for Sexual Offenders is accessible to the public. Joining us to discuss this further is Build One South Africa's Noluntu Hlazo-Webster. Good evening, Ms. Hlazo-Webster. Thank you very much for joining us on the SABC. Now, you in particular have been among those at the forefront campaigning for the National Register for Sexual Offenders to be made public, and come the end of the month, it will be so. It will be accessible now to the communities. What does this moment mean for society and you, in fact, as well?
Look, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you so much for having us, and thank you for having this important conversation. I think it has been important for us as Build One South Africa, for me particularly, to drive this particular issue because we have all these interventions that we see which are about addressing the issue of gender-based violence in this country, but most of them are about addressing the issue post the incident and post the offense and post the violation. This is something that says we could potentially reduce the number of incidents or offenses to begin with. You know, 9 out of 10 of the offenders who are convicted in this country actually become repeat offenders. And so if you have a register that is public, you can reduce the number because, first of all, they themselves will be aware that it is public knowledge that they have been convicted of such a crime, and it will actually discourage many from doing that. But it will also mean there are people who are able to protect themselves in ways such as I, as a mother, would want to know who in my house was previously a sexual offender. So that's why it has been important.
Now, there's a lot of information that is public in society, but people don't know how to go about accessing it. Just talk us through your understanding of the process that members of the public will follow to access this list, because if it's cumbersome, it might defeat the purpose.
So that's the information that we don't really have at the moment, and I certainly have written to the Minister details. First of all, currently as it stands, you need to apply and you need to be an organization that takes care of children or vulnerable persons. You need to pay 150 Rand to access the register, and you need to wait for something that is like 6 weeks to be able to access the register. So some of the questions that I have tabled to the minister is to ask, first of all, which list is this that we're talking about? So I want to ascertain, is this the National Register for Sex Offenders as tabled in the Sex Offenders and Related Matters Amendment Act? Are we talking about the same list? Because we could be talking about another list. Secondly, which crimes are going to be covered in this list? And then thirdly, what you ask, what is the process going to be to access the list? Because while we welcome the announcement and while it's important and it's a step towards making sure that we reduce recidivism, first of all, which is repeat offenses, but offenses to begin with, and discourage offenders, it only will work if it is implemented correctly.
Because that is the biggest question now, that beyond that announcement, you want it to be easily accessible, and that means, again, not to have a process that's cumbersome or where one does have to pay money or it's far away in remote areas, because for those in communities that are far-flung, it would then discourage them to actually take the drive if they don't have money to go perhaps to a nearby court or a nearby police station to access this. You want it readily available. So when exactly 100%. Do you plan to have a conversation with the minister around this as we continue to laud them for just this progress?
So we have already submitted the questions and we are waiting for that response. We should get it. Parliament resumes, the plenaries resume this week, and it's questions that we will be expecting to get before the end of February. We'll be following up on that and ensuring that we use other mechanisms if we don't get the responses in the next 2 weeks or so as a first. And I actually also do want to say that this is something that we need the public to be rallying with us on. We have a petition that we've had since December of 2024, and we continue to ask people to engage with us and to interact with us on this, because even now as we move to the next phase, which is now about making sure that this register actually makes a difference. We'll need people to rally behind that. I always said one of the things that drove me to really push this issue is that one day it hit me as I kept seeing the faces of these different women, as I kept seeing the faces of Uyinene as an example, and she would play in my mind. I would know what she looks like. I realized that I don't know who her perpetrator is.
Yeah.
And the more I researched, I found out this is somebody that could be out in 12 years, and they could be in my yard, or they could be in my workplace, and I wouldn't know. And so it's important that as a community, we understand really what the meaning and weight of having this register could mean.
All right. Noluntu, thank you very much for joining us this evening. That's Build One South Africa's Noluntu Hlazo-Webster speaking to us there.